now, but I don't think they're that close of friends. They're all in competition after all, trying to make it to the playoffs. We finally have the game ready to go here on Oceanborn. In the top left, Twisted Minds, he is Stats.
And his opponent in the bottom right side of the map, representing Dragon Kaisi Gaming, it's Oliveira. He's got his work cut out for him. Definitely Stats with a very big scalp to start the series, and taking care of him is going to be tough for the Terran. But Oceanborn, a very straight-up map to start things off. It's about as much of a balanced start as you could hope for. And interestingly, when I look at this matchup, I always think about what does Oliveira do to surprise his opponent. We can already tell he wants to play very sneaky. That second supply depot, looking to block scouting, but no gas behind it until a bit later. So Oliveira wants to go for a quick command center. Very well could be a quick 3 command center build order as well. And it's kind of nice to mix this in because Oliveira is very well known for playing the quick 2nd and 3rd barracks before starport, which hits a good 2-base timing attack, but he's done it so much over the last few months, it's become predictable. And I think that's part of where his frustration stemmed from, is the fact that the Protoss players are anticipating and countering his strategies.
It does feel like we're re-entering a past meta of complaints, discussion around the meta. But yeah, seriously, like I feel like it was a couple of years ago, more than a couple nowadays, where there was just a lot of Terrans that were trying to basically just cheese out the Protoss, right? I mean, we could go way back to like a BlizzCon in which Maru was only proxying all of his buildings. That was a time.
Yeah.
But now it feels like a lot of Terrans are expressing frustration. They're trying to get in the game, earlier rather than later. We're seeing a return of a lot of tank pushes, even at 3 racks every now and again. Felt like it fell out for a long time. It's gonna come back. And I think that's Oliveira's, his comfort point. He's always been an aggressive guy, and that's fantastic. But then how many builds do you have to throw out with so many Protoss in a row? And so this map is where he did that tank push versus Classic. He brought the SCPs multiple times. So we do have that really extreme changeup that you guessed he would do. 3 CC, all hidden as well. Not that Stats has any scouting going on as of yet.
But Sentry first going to allow him to hallucinate. And that's really important for Stats. I always feel like the worst build against these 3 command center openings for Protoss is something like a 2-gate Blink Robo or 3-gate Blink Robo, where it just takes you to like 5.5 minutes until the Observer finally gets in the base and you go, oh, it's 3 command centers. It's too late for me to match your economy. I kind of just am playing from behind. But in this sort of build order, yeah, Stats is playing very safe. But he's also, he skipped on things like scouting. He's played a very efficient build with the battery for safety. The hallucination, if that somehow gets blocked by the Marines, amazing for Oliveira. But most likely we're going to see Stats lean into chrono boosting probes, chrono boosting out his tech units. He'll aim for Colossus usually after Blink. That's his favorite way of playing. And as long as he sees that 3rd command center, he'll have all the information to adapt.
Yeah. Nice fast hallucination isn't the most common build, but it's seeming to be added on a little more with the sentry change, and just in general is going to be a good idea against, well, someone that you're just really not sure is going to throw out your builds. In this case, it could have seen that it was 3 racks, for instance, completely different, very aggressive, and that would give Stats enough time to prepare, hopefully. In this case, 3 CC. So got to be on that macro front. Not going to be reducing many units potentially once he sees this, and there you have it. And of course, Oliveira knows he's been scouted as well. He's not going to be doing anything aggressive. It's the knowledge game is here. Now it's about who's going to execute what.
Immediately moving out to take a 3rd base, as expected. I mean, there's certain players, when they see greed, they always go aggressive. Stats is the opposite. He sees greed, he just tries to match it. And adding in more probes non-stop, an extra pylon to make sure he doesn't get supply blocked. Rather crisp, clean play for the Protoss. Now, for Oliveira, I really wonder which direction he goes, because opening up with 3 racks after this, your factory and starport is massively delayed.
Yeah.
Actually getting to medevacs or siege tanks for a big 3-base push like you'd mentioned before, it takes a while to get there, and I think you definitely can have a lot of success, but there's also a scary thing where if you give Protoss a bit too much room, they do get to those powerful points where they've got the splash damage, the Guardian Shield's up, and you can't leave it too long as Oliveira. If you leave it too long, you need a fast 4th command center, you need to rush to the range liberators. But if he's looking to do the 3-base aggression, he's going to need to get out on the map and start pressuring sometime in the next 2 minutes.
Right, and we've always had some hesitation about that extreme late game from the Terrans versus Protoss, right? But both people had problems with it. And now it just feels like a lot of Terran players are saying, like, that super late game, that's scary. You know, actually trying to get to the Liberators. They've also basically been nerfed as well. It can be very scary, but Oliveira Steve's up for the challenge later on. Now we're just seeing this pre-medevac push. A little poke, little scare on the side of Stats, but his observer sees it, so he's not really scared. And he did get a decent amount of units, including an Immortal, as long as that shield battery's there to help him out. A little too far forward. 2 force fields happen to be used already. Stim is going to dissipate very soon, but Guardian Shield is up. Shield battery overcharge is up, and that should all together be an easy hold. And a little scary when those force fields maybe didn't stop their army, then you went a lot of sentries, but hey, okay.
Yeah, you got to be very careful with overextensions like that as Oliveira. He bled out a few more Marines and Marauders than he would like, and that is, of course, a fantastic trade for Stats. And every time you do that, you lose a little bit of this oomph, this power of mass bio. And as the Colossus come out, they also counter your army. You're going to be way behind on the Vikings with this style. Unless you get a really quick second starport, you're doing this with raw numbers. It's like, I want to catch the Protoss in the open, flank with Marauders from 2 sides and overwhelm. And if you lose 11 Marines for 1 Stalker, I mean, that's a really rough trade.
Yeah, it absolutely is. That did not go exactly according to plan there for Oliveira, but yeah, I really want to focus on that starport discussion. Something I was talking earlier with the other guys, it feels like the last month I've been forced to point out medevac healing and injured Terran armies entering into battle is actually, it feels like it's been more prevalent. We're kind of hypothesizing as to exactly why that would be, but I did say, like, well, it does seem we're getting some later starport builds. So either a 2 base 3 racks can be a little tricky, or in this case, the 3CC into barracks first and foremost. So yeah, and then you have to pick and choose between medevacs and Vikings, as Colossus are a staple of the matchup.
One thing is, because Stats is a bit more defensive than the other players, he won't quite have that like hero or Max Pax pace where he's in their face, baiting stims, running away, kind of skirmishing with Blink Stalkers in 2 or 3 places. He's going to be looking more for the direct engagement, and it's going to be like one big decisive one, famous for his mass gateway explosions in the late game as well. Stats will go up to like 24 gateways, sometimes off a single robo. He loves to remax so quickly on Zealots as the fights are happening. And for now, though, pressure comes forward. 4th base coming up. It is Thystorm coming in already. And the 4th Nexus does seem to be secure. Stats is down about 20 army supply, but he's got massive quality. I mean, you got batteries, force fields, Colossus there, split army push coming in for Oliveira. Observer sees it.
Yeah, it's all about how he actually split the army right now for Stats. Doesn't have a lot of units quite yet, but he is getting there. Especially as charge finishes. His own +1 will finish soon, too. Oliveira's already on that, and then only now adding a second forge. So their upgrades will probably actually even out to a certain degree. Not as of yet, but it also looks like Oliveira not finding any moments quite maybe on the right side, the left side. Maybe looking for more pylons, observers. Could go for a drop in there.
Is Oliveira making drilling claws?
He is, yeah, I was going to point that out. So a lot of Terrans have given up and pretty much on the Widowmine. They don't get that free invisibility from the armory anymore, so they can't just plant them around and be like, aha, gotcha. They do have to invest a little, and apparently Oliveira thinks that investment's worth it.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're not planning to mass Widowmine, squeezing it in, it's a pretty cheap upgrade. It's just normally you don't have a tech lab on the factory, which is why it gets ignored.
Right.
So not a bad little idea. The bio in the north is denying Stats from moving out. Stats starts to Stargate and +1 air weapons.
Oh,
so many Protoss players in this situation would go, okay, I've been defending for 9 minutes. Let's get on the map. Let's go attack. Yeah. Stats is like, no, why would I do that? Let's just go carriers, mate. I'm fantastic at Storm Carrier.
That scan could not have been more perfectly timed, I feel like. Is Stargate right then and there building? You know that is their plan. Now, of course, Stats could not invest a lot into it. Second Stargate Fleet Beacon, that could still be missing. But some resources are going to be gone, even into that +1 air weapons. So Oliveira, if he could get maxed out, I mean, a push would be very, very scary. He is taking a 4th base, building a 5th as I am speaking. Both of them now working on that second upgrade. So Oliveira has a lead, but he's not maxed out. He doesn't seem like he wants to go for a big old push. A couple Widowmines just to harass, and well, those are cloaked. Might be a little surprising for Stats.
Indeed, the Widowmine does not reveal itself after firing. Drilling claws has, of course, been completed, but the cannon comes up and shoots that down for now. Oliveira does not have a huge amount of tech production up. He's got lots of command centers coming in, so he's preparing for a long game. But I do wonder where it goes. Do we see second and third starport go down? Do we see a fusion core as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we haven't seen it yet. So it could just be heavy Viking to deal with the Colossus and then the carriers eventually. But of course, you're vulnerable to Psystorm. We saw Stats dropping some big storms earlier on Clem's Vikings, and in other games we've seen that. So definitely something you got to be just wary of, the fact that you also can't use those starports to make libs. Like, if you don't have lib range, they're really not a great unit in the late game.
Yeah. And it's really weird, I think, as well, to go into Liberators when the Stargates were already up. There's usually a bit more of a this, then that, then this, then that. And they've kind of skipped everything and just been like, amazing late game, go for it. But you do usually want to include some Liberators, basically trying to make both army compositions also complicated, no just like single A move, you know, target around. And that Liberators do that. Oliveira got personal cloaking for his Ghost, but we also had Nuke for half a second. I think we actually will get to Nukes. This is apparently going to be a very late game TVP.
Fusion Core does go down as well. I absolutely agree. I think Nukes has such a good zoning ability. It's creating threat on the map. And with those slow-moving Skytoss armies, they can be quite effective. It's going to be interesting to see, because I just did not expect Oliveira to play late game. I mean, I even think in late mid-game, over the last few months, Oliveira has looked a little bit weak in that area, but it seems like he's really kind of worked on those weaknesses, and he's saying, I'm happy to play the late game against you, Stats. I know it's hard to beat you with an all-in, so let's take this to the long game. And we've got two players with incredible respect for each other, where I think to the untrained eye, this is a rather almost boring game. You're like, well, why aren't they just trying to kill each other? It's like, well, they're both wary. There's a certain amount of respect. You get different players who will just throw the kitchen sink at each other and try to take the other one out. Both of them are saying, no, I'm waiting for you to make a mistake, and I'm trying to tech one step ahead of you. And even this, like, Stats' first real aggression is just a couple of Zealots poking in, looking for weakness. Observers getting scanned and sniped down here.
Eventually. He's got extra command centers, so that wasn't too costly there, and plenty of workers as well, both of them around 77. It is interesting to see Oliveira do this style of play, but now the question really for me would be who is more comfortable around this time. I think Oliveira is a little less uncomfortable, but he's obviously saying, I think I can try and change things up as far as what you're used to, Stats, versus a Terran at this stage. I am also going to play super late game, and that alone might be enough to throw Stats off. He is kind of looking for an engagement. Widowmines with the cloak, like that's annoying. That was annoying before you had to get Drilling Claws for it. That is what Terrans did. And once again, we have that in play thanks to that Drilling Claws upgrade. You got to make sure you have an observer. Oliveira with triple medevac drops heading into the natural as the Protoss army breathes down his neck.
Here we go. Triple drop comes in. RoboBay's looking exposed. Not going for it just yet, just stimming and kind of fighting in. But actually, Stats goes for the push. Mothership activates the cloaking field there. He's going to go in and try to take advantage of the fact that Oliveira's units aren't all at home.
Oh.
Massive storm on the Vikings.
Yeah, they do. Oh, the Ghost Cloak up and get all of the High Templars. They're all gone. They turn into Argons, which might be able to help. It is actually looking quite bloody and bruised here for the Protoss supply. Ghost still cloaked up, getting so much free damage. That is not a Terran army left over right there. It's a couple of medevacs, and now the production is going to be camped. Oliveira, his army is now just mostly this over here, killing the Stargates, killing his opponent's production. Typically, we say Terran is weaker in this moment when production is camped, but really they're both going to lose access to all their main base components here. This is a full-on base trade.
The damage output is insane. The Ghosts aren't getting a chance to cloak. The Widowmines are not getting a chance to burrow. And the Stalker Zealot Probe is going to jump forwards and overwhelm this. That's looking very good because he's got the carriers, rebuilding interceptors on top of the production. He reclaims his own production, and Oliveira just can't get anything out.
Yeah, it is brutal. You know, Oliveira, he wasn't quite ready for the defense, and he had a significant chunk of his army that was apart from you, right? So you really have to have the best defense possible. And ideally, you don't get a Protoss who gets that moment where they're like, no, I have to go. You know, they choose incorrectly, or worse, they're indecisive. That's usually how you get them. But Stats knew that he had to go, and then get on top of that production as well, which really is still more killer for the Terran, because, you know, our barracks, they pop right there. Warp Gate, you have a little more choice and flexibility to warp in, which is exactly how those Stalkers defeated the drop.
It's such a wild thing because usually you're not worried about that Protoss pushing in. You're worried about breaking the Protoss before the game goes too long, but Stats showed a decisive ability to press forward. And Oliveira, of course, wasn't ready for it. In hindsight, more missile turrets, maybe a planetary fortress out front, your natural, something you don't normally think about unless you're playing a Zerg. But hey, Stats gets such a strong army, and he took advantage of this counter drop so well. Yeah,
and you can see actually Oliveira, he basically stopped paying attention as it dropped because he was defending, so he didn't kill the pylon that actually powered a bunch of buildings. I'm not saying that would have changed anything. I do think what would have been a big change He knew that Stats didn't have an observer because those Widow Mines didn't get cleared up. If he had Ghost cloaked from the get-go, he would have EMP'd everything. From the get-go, before those Vikings took that damage.
That's absolutely true. The storm on the Vikings was massive. And, of course, having the EMPs out earlier, taking out the High Templar, it could have been a difference maker. But Stats there with a supercharged army. And we know that carriers excel in that position because they are the one unit that can build more combat units inside your opponent's base. I mean, other than getting a Warp Prism there, I guess. Yeah. It's just hard to stop, you know? The Terran units are high damage, fragile units that you need to build up together. Whereas Protoss can just warp in the units wherever they want. They can warp them in at their third or fourth base. So definitely a nice way to clutch victory. And Stats, I think, showing that he is a massive favorite in this tournament for PVT. In the top right side now of map 2 on Ghost River, it is, of course, Stats.
In the top left for DKZ Gaming, he is Oliveira. I like this music.
Yeah, very atmospheric.
Orchestral.
Yeah, kind of like a bit of that kind of magical energy to it. There's a lot on the line right now. Are the men with the guns going to take down the dirty Xenos, or are the Protoss indeed going to once again make those lasers and their magic conquer the silly lesser races? Those with the orifices, the Terran.
Who has a door and who doesn't?
That's true. You can't make a pylon that raises up and down.
Yeah,
are they really a strong faction? Are they silly Protoss? You think they could just warp one in and then, I don't know, cloak it or something and phase through
You'd think
right?
they could do a lot of things because they're basically magic, but no, for the sake of balance. They do not get the Spear of Adun. Yeah, so Oliveira, I'd said it very quickly because we're kind of ramping up, but no one, I think, really thinks of him as a super late game player. Not that he hasn't had to play it. There's been tons of metas where it just is what you're going to do. So even though I think of him as an aggressive TDZ player, I also can remember a ton of 40-minute down to 10 supply games that he's played as well. So of course it's possible, but with a lot of the sentiment being that you are uncomfortable the later that TVP goes, you might not expect Oliveira to do it. I think the style change, the pacing change compared to maybe what Clem was showing or obviously what Oliveira showed in his match versus Classic, that is a great idea.
Yeah.
But Stats is just proving that even if you combine your heads together and try and figure out what to do against the guy, he's just rock solid.
It's so hard to practice against him as well because he just has such a unique style, and the way he plays is really in his own way. So I think he's got this advantage coming into this tournament where he's now at a point, he's developed the style that he's playing to an incredibly high level, and no one else is really playing quite the same. So the Terrans are coming in and going, oh gosh, this works against other people who play kind of like this, but it's not working against you.
What is Stats Probe looking for, man? That is on the hunt.
I guess that's for proxy starport, right? That's like, I guess it's a Hellion drop?
Yeah, I guess it's not actually early. It's just because Oliveira went for a second Barracks on a starport. Yeah, you're right. That is perfectly timed then. Very scared of the Hellion drop on Ghost River. I guess I could see that being a popular build here. In general, this is a short map, but obviously you got some terrain features helping to defend your bases that makes it not, just push and win. Twilight Council again for Stats, as Oliveira, as I noted, did not add on that starport. It is 2 barracks and a factory so far. There is the 3rd barracks. Perhaps he changes his build orders for the maps up a little bit. Oceanborn goes 3CC, maybe this time around. He does do that SCV pull with the tank push.
Depth shading forwards, does actually get inside. Slight mistake there from Oliveira. Very frustrating to have the Adepts potentially going around your base, but with Cyclone out, it's easy to hunt down. Stats doesn't chase it. Now, Oliveira is famous for this opening, right? He's so well known for it. Some of the other guys like Coffee, unfortunately couldn't make it to this tournament this time around, have used it a lot in the Chinese scene, and they are experts at brutal 2-base tank pushes. Oliveira has done this to so many Protoss players, and it really should be something that's on Stats' radar. You should be playing safe, and 3-gate blink is pretty darn safe.
Yeah, exactly. He went for 3-gate this time around, which gives you that flexibility of making units, or if you discover they are going 3CC, you could be like, okay, that was a mistake, but do what you gotta do. But this time around, 3 gateways, you see an incoming attack, build, build, build. That is the next confirmation, because clearly Stats has already an idea of what's going on here. And I gotta say, Oliveira, when he did this push versus Classic, it did basically win when it first pushed, true. But it was a struggle to actually cut the head off. Yeah, he had to do it again like 2 or 3 more times. So if Stats was able to watch that, I can guarantee it's going to be a better start because he already seems to have such a great grasp on what Oliveira is doing.
Going up to 4 gas on 2 base, Stats seems to be saying, I don't need a third. We're just going to mass units on 2 base and try to be ready for this. Engineering bay has gone down, so Oliveira is actually adding a bit of progression. It's not like I'm just going to shove right now and build bunkers at your base. But of course, the starport is miles and miles behind. So I do wonder if we're going to see Marauders start up in a second, or if we're saving money for a starport.
Observer's not going to get the exact information. I mean, basically, if they'd been able to see a starport or not, that would have been primo. Instead, it gets cut short, sees a tech lab researching, but not quite sure what that would be researching in. Specifically, there's the attack. The Adepts see it. It's coming across. It is a short map. Reinforcements will come very quickly. Adepts actually choose to shade in, hoping to buy some time, kill some SCVs, maybe even some reinforcing Marines, as the Stalkers are focusing on the micro here. Any Marines you can cut down prior to them getting combat shields, extra nice. Now that's going to pop on in. And here we go. This is the tank push. Can Stats hold on?
First Colossus, I believe, is not out just yet. Just one Immortal and a few Stalkers. The batteries aren't ready yet.
Wow.
There's one on the right side, but it's very far away. That shield battery's not in range of the Stalkers.
This is really awkward. I mean, it's going to be generally awkward anyway. You got a tight choke going into your natural, and so much of a Sim City was put there. That's
there's no
a huge
pylon.
problem.
There's no pylon for the Robo. If that pylon goes down!
Oh, there it is. Colossus will not pop out. Stalkers blink forward to try and do something, but this is a complete disaster. I said it was going to be better. He seemed to have a grasp on it, but it was easy peasy for Oliveira. The shield batteries weren't done, man. Like, I can't believe that was the case. The Colossus, you know, that's kind of the build order. It can be tough to get that out in time, but...
It's a small map, and the shield battery on the right side is just too far back to help against the tanks, right? You go, oh, I've got a battery ready, but it's like, well, no, your buildings are kind of blocking it. They're not really in there. And I mean, that's classic Oliveira. Like you said, you thought that would be ready for it, but that push hits so hard on Ghost River.
So much of his production was in that natural. I know that's not extremely uncommon. The Robo definitely gets put in the natural a lot of the time. A gateway, certainly a lot of the time as well.
Yeah.
But I think 2 gateways and the Robo in the line that they made, I think was like the start of a very unideal setup. Yeah, they literally made a line up to the assimilator that you couldn't back through. You had to like go either left or far right. I mean, it just makes it awkward. That is part of the appeal of this push a lot of time, honestly, is that it makes it awkward for the Protoss. So it's, you know, fair. It looked like a strong start for Stats, and then you actually looked at what he had, and it was pretty much nothing.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a Colossus to deal with the Marines, and you don't have Charge to deal with the tanks, you need one of those tools. If you don't have either, it's incredibly awkward. You need to have good numbers, and the fact that he did rush up to 4 gas their Stats, and even though the Stalkers, I mean, they did pretty good. The Adepts were harassing. There's just not that much room to get the work done. And Oliveira showed his trademark play. I can't wait to see what the third map is. I've forgotten what it was, but I think obviously that's going to be a big impact in terms of, you know, a bigger map, a safer map for the defense. Stats will be very happy with. But if there's another short rush distance map, then of course our Terran will be no doubt looking to follow up with more aggression here. As we do go into Alcyon, the bottom left side of the map in the red, it is of course Stats, known as the Shield of Ire for his incredible defensive play.
And in the top right, we do have the blue Terran, Oliveira. So I did want to take a look at the specifics of the rush distance, because nerdy, but seriously, the 3 seconds rush distance difference from Ghost River to Oceanborn.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, 34 to 31 seconds. I mean, that is literally all the shield batteries finishing, right?
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It sounds like so little, but you don't realize just how quickly things happen in a StarCraft II game. 3 seconds is a world of difference.
Yeah, and Amphion actually being the, or Alcyone, sorry. Or Alcyone. Also being, actually the same distance. So it is bigger. It is more comfortable for Stats. Yeah. Oliveira might be less likely than to do something very aggressive in the early game. But then I think it's just Oliveira making sure that he's varying up when he does the builds that he does have. Obviously, that one worked especially well on Ghost River. So what is the plan here on Alcyone? Because we're kind of expecting, I guess we're in agreement, that Stats is going to do mostly the same defensive thing.
Yeah.
Don't see him changing it up into a 4-gate, especially with the last life. It would be a change, though.
Probe Scout does come in, and the STV is going to start that command center on the natural expansion, not able to be blocked. Marine should be spotted coming out of the barracks, I think. Yeah, he's going to show it straight away. Stats actually sitting a little bit close to that. We'll lose that probe.
That's a mistake. Yeah, it's always a little bit of a bummer.
We've got very shadowy pro gamers right now, but I did see a visible facial recognition from Stats there where he looked like a little bit like, ooh, that was silly. Shouldn't have lost that probe.
Now they're putting the lights on them. There we go. We can see how disappointed Stats is. As we get first-person view. I love the first-person view. If you can see a little bit of that keyboard action as well. And obviously, they're just really setting up their styles of play. It does look like Oliveira's 1x expand is leading into a... I'm trying to see his actual... it's a factory.
Yeah, it's a factory. Stats is really methodical, by the way. When you watch Stats play, look at his mouse cursor. It looks so casual. He looks so chilled out when he plays. There's a few guys like this. Maru kind of has this feeling as well, where you think Maru would be kind of frantic, and you watch his first-person view, and you're like, oh, he's really calm. It's so slow and methodical, but he gets a lot done, and that's the efficiency difference. Oliveira is a bit more of a spammer. I play like that as well. I like to just spam my buttons and kind of jump between screens, but it's kind of fascinating because Stats was famous years ago at his peak, before he went to the military, for being way lower on ladder than every other pro player, but showing up to tournament and just being unfazable and delivering 120%, whereas the other players, they'd say would lose 300, 400, 500 MMR at LAN, and he'd actually play better.
This is an interesting little micro battle we got here. 2 Adepts versus 3 Marines and a Hellion. Stats can't really continue more, but he's trying to see what's popping out. Obviously, if he could be let into the base, that would be a free scout. That'd be nice, but as it is, denied, and now just trying to see, is it a Cyclone, is it a Widowmine? There you go. And then, I would say most importantly, if he could get Cyclone, whether it's a Starport or not, probably won't until it actually drops into his base. As the first Widowmine did reveal itself, it's going to crawl him back. Second one is coming. It is a classic Widowmine drop coming out from Oliveira. Stats has all 3 Adepts. Only made Adepts by going into Blink. And I think that's a 3rd gateway being added on as well. Well, there's the medevac. Hey, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, this really is like Stats to a T, just doing the same build every game, basically. Oliveira's awkward. Yeah, good hot pickups, though. He does dodge a few projectiles, but at the end of the day, Stats gets, I think, 2 or 3 Marines and a Hellion. A fantastic trade for Stats, who doesn't care about these Adepts anymore. They're an early game scouting unit. Yeah. He's very happy to slow down Oliveira's pressure with that. That is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm actually, that went really poorly. The Marines were already a little injured, and the healing didn't affect them fast enough, and now we got some problems here. Yeah, we are in Texas, guys. I don't know if this is the problem, but I did get at least a tweet saying, hey, 600,000 people lost their power.
Yeah, flood warning, power warning. I was like, I'm going. It's winter. It's getting kind of cold back in Australia. I'm like going to Dallas, and in summer it's going to be great. And I looked at the weather before I came in and I went, oh my, there's a lot of storms going on. But thankfully we haven't been affected too much so far here. And this could obviously just be a server issue. You never know what's going on with a bit of lag here or there, or a slight hardware shift. But it looks like they'll obviously wait for that one to settle out. Now, yeah, just kind of chatting about that, it felt like Oliveira was a bit too eager. Like, he had too much urgency. Like, I got to get across with this drop. I can't miss my timing. And then obviously the Adept Shades threatened again. He went, oh, I got to kind of unload now on top of the Adepts. And you just don't want to be unloading damaged Marines on top of Adepts. So that puts him in a position where he's lost all of the momentum. He's now going Interference Matrix Raven.
Yeah, that's interesting. We still let it added on, obviously, and Colossus have been a staple. So you will absolutely get a big money item in the Colossus with an Interference Matrix. But I was also thinking about his Widowmine placement. Oliveira, no scouting what Stats is doing. 3 Adepts can be an opener with a Stargate a lot more of the time, I guess, whereas obviously you start building a Stalker count if you actually are going into Blink. I was wondering if he was thinking it could be a Stargate play, but generally you wouldn't get a Raven. But then again, a lot of Koreans still do. I don't know. But
yeah, in the old days, it was never make a Raven versus Phoenix, right? And these days, they're like, nah, we still build the Raven no matter what.
I feel like the Koreans didn't even stop, man. That is a scout, and it is a good one because it survived. Stats reveals Blink, obviously. I mean, this is probably the guess, anywho.
Yeah, I mean, Stats hasn't shown a lot of variability. He's been doing the same build with very tiny variations all 3 games. Very similar to how he opened against Clem as well. So this is like his solid style where he's figured out I can react to everything and just kind of spot what's coming and deal with it. Great reaction with the Observer, gets out of range before he can get taken down by those Marines.
Yeah.
And he's getting a pretty solid scout off as he skirts the edge of the base.
Yeah, a little fortunate. He was kind of paying attention that that's a second to Adept, still threatening. You know, it's just, the Marines aren't out. You probably wouldn't even get a lot of SCV damage when you're close to SCVs, but it would be annoying if they got in. Third Nexus is finishing up here as we got the Colossus in charge on the way, all standard here for Stats. Obviously, Stats was able to scout everything he really could, including the fact that there is a Raven. So now that's something that he really has to prioritize dealing with, is that could very well have the interference matrix. That effect should be repaired. Usually Oliveira does that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good attention to detail. He'll repair it now. And his third command center is moving out. So he's going to move out, reveal the third command center, and say, hey, I'm happy to play a macro game once again. Yes, Stats, you may be on 62 probes, but it's okay to be a little behind in workers as Terran, because as these upgrades kick in, Stim, Combat Shields, Concussive, and +1, not to mention the medevacs entering the fray, it's time for Oliveira to move on the map and start pressuring. Yes, this map's hard to kill the opponent with the rush distance, but it's great for dropping. You've got that whole south side of the map, you've got a big edge in there, the edge onto the side of the natural. The Robo Bay was scouted earlier by the medevacs, so that's a target he could always go for later on. We could see Stats is prepared a little bit with some Stalkers, even though he didn't see this move out. And no doubt Oliveira going to be looking to kind of roam the map, and if he can scare Stats away from a fourth base or maybe deny it, find some damage, that will allow him to progress to the next step and really keep pace with the Protoss economy.
We are getting the setup for a two-pronged attack. Drops off to the left, main attack down the middle. Stats is wary of one of them, and it might be like thinking the other one's coming. His Stalkers are in position and even being controlled, so he's 100% in the correct guess here. That's a drop coming to the natural. Good split of the army, I believe. Observer barely survives. Okay, the Stalkers, they got a couple of shots off, but they were not focused at that time. Now blinking awkwardly into the bio, so that was not a preparation. Stats now going to lose his fourth base as well. This is actually perfect for Oliveira. Cuts in with a natural, attacks on the board. The interference matrix on the Colossus as well, and things are going into a disaster here for Stats.
Oh, that bio's heavily stimmed, but there is just nothing to fight it. Interference matrix, Colossus gets blasted, the Immortal goes down, and a perfect withdrawal timing. Oliveira says, let's not overextend, that's a big army. I gotta get these guys home. He might have to stim again to run home because there are Zealots and Stalkers chasing him. He's got to let these units heal up and utilize that massive advantage that he just built.
It does seem like that Stats is actually like a super, super good tournament-winning player if he doesn't have one moment that just domino effects. All right, and it does seem to be kind of prominent for him in his current stage of improvements. And unfortunately, that just happened here in a game 3. Stats down 40 supply, at least guarding the natural now, but does he have enough to stop that main push? With the Raven still intact, the High Templar, if he has one, he hasn't worked one in yet. Then we have to get interference matrix. There it is. Oh, the interference matrix already went off. No feedback happened. Now you got to give up that fourth base and hope that they don't chase you into that third.
Good force fields for Stats, though. They do keep him alive. Adding Storm in here with the Colossus. Does he have the sort of comeback power that like that Estrella sort of player has, where they just like they're on the edge of defeat and they fight back? I've seen Stats make some pretty impressive comebacks recently. His PvZ comebacks have been otherworldly. Like, he's been on the brink of defeat so many times. Doing that against the Terran like Oliveira, though, easier said than done, because this man is in your face and aggressive from start to finish.
Yep. Storm is done, and maybe a couple of surprise ones will change the tide here. Did not catch if that was a cancel. The Raven still being impacting this game is so bad. Another interference matrix, but the Raven still lives. Kill it. The EMP does take some of the High Templars, but not all of them. When Storm does injure a lot of that bio army, Archon's going to tank a little bit. Shield battery still helping out, and that is going to be an extra stim if Oliveira decides to commit. He is not. But the pull away is pretty much as safe as can be. He still holds on to an almost 60 supply lead.
You know, Oliveira saying that he's lost in this matchup, doesn't know what to do just a few weeks ago. What a turnaround. I mean, he's beaten Classic already today. He's on the verge of defeating Stats. What a way to start this tournament. Two of the best defensive Protosses in the entire world. Oh,
that Raven was so useful. Oliveira takes down the Protoss to advance to the playoffs. One of the easiest